The British Virgin Islands financial sector powers more than $1.5 trillion of investment around the world and supports 2.2 million jobs. More than 400,000 BVI business companies are currently active, which enable the British Virgin Islands to be the 7th largest source of foreign direct investment. Joining me is Gary Hales from BVI Finance. The BVI business company is over 30 years old. How is it used today?
There's a wide range of reasons why companies are set up in BVI. And a lot of it is to do with capital flow around the world. They're holding companies for either real estate assets, for succession planning for families, things like joint ventures being set up. Companies are set up for investment. So if people are putting funds in together to then invest in a different country around the world or a different initiative, then a BVI company is a great product to utilize to enable them to do that. And for listings as well, a number of companies are set up in BVI with anticipation to list in London, New York. Those are the reasons. And if you look behind it, what's happened, over the 30 years, BVI is really focused on maintaining its reputation as being very well regulated, adhering to all the global standards to make sure we're really at the forefront of what we're doing.
Give me some examples of the way that BVI business companies are being used to facilitate economic growth worldwide.
So, on some of the examples that I've mentioned, a BVI company being used for investment purposes is a perfect example. You could be Chinese investors looking to invest in an infrastructure project in Africa, for example. And you may not want to set up the company in Africa, you may not want to set it up in Asia. You're looking for a jurisdiction that's tax neutral. You'll still pay your tax as a company, but you won't end up being double taxed through having it in BVI. If you look at the $1.5 trillion that flows through BVI, the tax that's generated for governments around the world is in excess of $15 billion. So there's some real benefits that way in terms of what's being produced from the activities that go on within BVI.
Now, the BVI business company model has been replicated around the world. How have you adapted and updated it over the decades to make sure that it remains competitive and relevant?
As you mentioned earlier, there are approximately 400,000 companies incorporated in BVI, which makes us one of the world's largest players in that particular market. And we're constantly ensuring we're adhering to global best practice. Whatever the OECD has put out there, the World Bank, etc., we make sure that we meet those requirements. If you couple that with things like having English common law, having a stable, democratically elected government, those sorts of things all help create this environment that we've got in BVI that enables us to keep growing and keep developing and be recognized as a globally reputable jurisdiction.
And on that point, you've recently introduced a beneficial ownership secure search program. Tell me more about that.
So that's off the back of the agreement we signed with the UK exchange of notes in April 2016. And basically within all those 400,000 companies, the ultimate beneficial owner of those companies are on that system. So that if HMRC are doing a tax investigation on a particular company, they can request through the appropriate authorities in BVI for information on that particular company. It's been built by BDO in conjunction with Microsoft. And I guess the best way I've described it, not being a techie myself, is the analogy of an apartment building. So a hacker would have to get into the building. And then if you consider in the building, there are hundreds of apartments, and each apartment is a corporate service provider. So not only would the hacker have to get into the building, they'd have to then get into every single apartment within that building to gain access to all that information. So extremely difficult, nigh on impossible. And the level of security alone just to get into each one of those is the equivalent of your online banking. So it's really a world-class innovative system that we have developed.
We've talked about what BVI is achieving for the world's economies, but what do you want to achieve for the islands themselves?
We play a number of different roles. Obviously, we're promoting and marketing BVI financial services. And the end result of that is obviously that generates income for the island, which benefits the population. And 60% of BVI government's income is from financial services, which then goes to build the hospitals, the roads, the normal infrastructure development. We've recently done this report with Capital Economics, which talks about the value that BVI adds to the world. And in the BVI, there are 2,200 people who are directly employed in financial services. But if you look at all the knock-on effects of those that are driving taxis, working in restaurants, in the shops, etc., that actually takes another 3,000. So we've got 5,000 to 5,500 people directly and indirectly working in financial services in the BVI. That supports 2.2 million jobs worldwide. So for a population like that, it gives us a great deal of pride of how we are contributing to the global economy.
Gary, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't watched our video with Gary describing the post-hurricane situation on the islands, click through to see that now. Please subscribe for more international insights from World Finance, but for the latest news, you should spend some time on worldfinance.com.